Welcome villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I am your guide, All Kage. Today we have, What If Naruto and Sasuke Fused, Part 1, and I hope you like the video, and subscribe if you're new. But before we begin, I have a couple of shout-outs for today, which can be seen on screen. Hope you guys who comment keep doing so to give me new ideas. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Part 1, The Dual Phoenix. The hot sun stretched across the village hidden in the leaves, a calm summer day for all who lived in the area, though the leaves in the trees had been abnormally bright this day, almost as if something great was going to happen, and they wanted to share it with the world. Wisps of hot air flowed everywhere they could, even into an open window of a small shop, bringing the smell of trees and nature into the place before stretching its warmth even more. The shop was a mess, as if a storm had grown in the place, only to scatter multiple items around the place. As already stated, the place was a mess, with knickknacks and leaks of water on the floor. Some items still were on shelves, but many of them had been knocked over, and only some stood where they needed to be. The once calming warm breeze became cold and harsh as it kept moving in through the building, and sounds of rummaging became clearer, as items shifted around with seemingly no help. Soon the now cold breeze swirls around a blond boy. The cold confused him a bit, as it was such a hot day before, and now his orange and blue jumpsuit seemed fitting for the cold in the shop. He had been the one to rummage through the items, as a bit of the light in the shop shined on the metal part of his headband. The birthmarks on his cheeks stretched as he gave a blank frown. His birthmarks were like whiskers, and his bright blue eyes opened before he had thrown an item aside. "Naruto," a voice soft but annoyed called out. The blonde looked up at the mention of his name, seeing as he only knew one person who would be annoyed with him on such an early morning. When he looked up, Naruto was met with an image that he had seen so often that he could imagine it in his head. It was his teammate Sakura, who had pink hair, and a short red shirt that formed below her shorts like a dress. A similar headband to the blonde's was placed atop her head like a hair tie or bow, and as Naruto watched her a bit, his blank look soon turned into a worried frown. The girl had held an annoyed look. It went with the way she had spat the blonde's name. Her fist clenched as she placed them on her hips, and her brows furrowed soon upon seeing her fellow shinobi. "Hey Sakura," said Naruto, his tone shaking as he tried to figure out exactly what he had done to warrant her being angry on such a warm day. Options quickly filled his mind, running through exactly all he had done in the day. He had come to this shop with his team, made up of his sensei Kakashi, Sakura-chan, and the brat Uchiha. All of them came here with him to finish a D-rank mission, which was to help an old lady clean her shop, which he absolutely hated. He didn't understand the purpose of D-rank missions for a ninja. To him, they were meant to be doing missions like saving a princess, or beating up a bunch of bandits, not some random old lady's chores. Eventually, Naruto became bored with the job, and he began to be annoyed with the old lady as he soon saw her glares that he would see from every villager in his home, glares that he didn't want to deal with on any day, especially not this one. So when left alone, the blonde decided to start looking for whatever he could to stop his immense boredom. And eventually, he started making more of a mess than what had already been. But he didn't think that was the reason for the girl's anger. It had to be something else. But when he slowly looked back at her, she seemed to be even angrier than she was before. "Are you going to tell me why this place is a mess?" the girl roared finally, her loud tone assaulting Naruto's ears. The whiskered blonde winced at the loud sarin-like voice. He then turned back to Sakura, deciding the mess was why she was mad. "I was just," he started, but he was soon cut off by another one of the girl's yells. "This part of the shop is worse than when we started," she yelled, getting a flinch from the blonde. He then started to rub the back of his head, his voice turning almost defensive as he spoke to try and explain again. "I was just looking around," he yelled back shortly, but his voice quickly became quieter upon seeing the girl's unchanged face. "It just got out of hand. I couldn't find anything interesting." "Interesting," the girl repeated with another yell. Her eyes sharpened once the boy had finished his words, and now she began to give a stronger glare. "We aren't here to be looking for something interesting, Naruto," said Sakura annoyedly. "We are here to help out the nice old lady who placed the mission. If you can't even do that, then you might as well give up being a shinobi." Give up being a shinobi, he repeated in his head, with everything he had gone through to be here right now, after all he had proven, and promised to be, to show he was more than just the whispers and glares, but instead of retaliation, he shifted his words deep into himself. Naruto looked down at what the girl had said, clenching his fist as his emotions began to bubble up. Not that the pinkett cared about such a thing. All the blonde could do was let his emotions fizzle down, as he always had. With others, he couldn't let the girl that once had his affection see how much the glares bothered him. It only took a few seconds for the boy to soften his eyes and give a forced smile, letting his hand unclench as he gave a sheepish look. "It's not that bad, Sakura-chan, I can fix it right now." "No," Sakura spat, making Naruto flinch once more, as his emotions seemed to be close to cracking his fake smile. "I'll fix it. You've already messed up a lot. Best for you to stay out of the way and wait until the mission is done." Naruto looked down again, his fake smile fully fading, still unnoticed by the girl. Before he had walked off to get out of the shop, the blonde ended up waiting outside for the rest of the time his team had been in the shop, and only after that did they come out with what Sakura called a nice old lady. Sasuke and Kakashi looked towards the blonde as soon as they stepped out, one with indifference, the other with a blank-eyed smile, which Naruto still didn't think should be possible, and then, along with Sakura, they moved towards him with a few steps. The three waved off the older woman. All except Sasuke, and not long after did the three move away from the blonde to leave the shop, but as the three left, Naruto stayed back for a few seconds, and gained a glare from the older woman. He was expecting as much. He knew he would gain a glare, but he just had one question for the lady, a burning one that needed to be answered. For such a thing he could deal with the glare, so with a quick sigh, the blonde turned around, quickly walking to the woman. The lady, however, didn't lose her glare. Her eyes widened for a few seconds when seeing Naruto coming closer to her, but it didn't stay that way as her glare quickly hardened once more. Her eyes moved on to Naruto with every step. She seemed in wonder as to why the boy came back to her shop, but it was also clear she didn't care enough to stop her glare. Finally, Naruto was in front of her, his fist clenched as his mouth arched into a frown, although his eyes didn't dare to look toward her, instead turning to her shop. "What?" she spat coldly, crossing her arms with a huff, making it clear she had hated seeing the boy come back. "I just need to ask you a question." The boy almost whispered the words out, barely loud enough for the woman to understand. His eyes even started to look at her, making the woman raise an eyebrow, questioning why he came back, just for a question. This was new to her, the village demon having willingly walked to her shop, after having been glared at. This was probably unheard of in all the village, but soon, her brow came back down, and instead, her eyes narrowed with questioning thoughts. "What kind of question, you brat?" she said sharply, although the boy didn't flinch at her words like she had expected. "Why do you villagers believe I am Kyuubi?" Naruto's tone suddenly dropped, turning serious at his question. He knew about what was inside of him since the day he became a shinobi. The bastard Mizuki had quickly spilled his guts on that. Sure, it was a flat attempt to distract and kill him, but once he found out and thought on it more, it was so obvious. What he didn't understand was why everyone believed he had been the Kyuubi, and why, aside from other kids his age, was the whole village told about his burden, before he was even aware of it. But he only cared about his first question for now, and as he looked towards the woman in front of him, he could see her begin to shift in confidence. Her once powerful glare suddenly became widened eyes, and her crossed arms dropped quickly. This was another thing she hadn't expected. The demon's question hadn't been one that had been asked too often. Most older villagers just knew the demon was a demon. And that was that. The anger from losing families had fueled their thoughts, but it had to be true. But then why couldn't she answer the question? She had a son and husband that she had lost to the brat on that day. she had friends, who had lost everything, when the nine-tailed fox destroyed the village, and yet she couldn't answer why anyone could have thought the brat was a demon. "Are you going to answer?" The blonde's voice had brought the woman back to reality. His sudden seriousness made her take a step back, finding it hard to use her voice. His stare started placing questions in her head, about whether she was wrong. She had given the boy many glares, any time she could, but if she was wrong, she would have been giving the blonde those looks for nothing. She would have been glaring, and whispering, and been hate-filled at a child who may only have done one or two pranks around the village. She looked down, her eyes weakening as her thoughts got to her. "I don't know why," she finally whispered, her voice not holding its edge when speaking. Flashes of images of her soon followed her answer. His spiky black hair having painted a clear image that she could always remember. "I guess, we all just wanted an outlet for our anger," she continued, her voice staying in that low tone as she kept her head down. "I can tell you this, I don't know how, but you might have changed my mind about you. You're still a brat that has always been pranking the village, but maybe you are not it." Those words felt confusing coming out of her mouth. She was the last person to have the right to apologize to the kid. As she talked to the blonde more, it started to become clear that the village might have made a big mistake, but with Naruto, he stayed quiet, searching her tone for any lies, as a shinobi of the leaf should. But he couldn't find any, and while to anyone else that would be great, he felt that usually this wouldn't be possible. Why was he able to change this lady's mind just by making her think about it, but when everyone else had been told to change, they just couldn't? He couldn't tell anymore. Was it him, or were some people just not able to see past their hate? If so, that meant the old lady was different. Maybe, as Sakura said, maybe she was kinder than the other villagers. That's why she was able to see. Coming to an answer he liked, Naruto shifted his eyes off the lady, his look shifting to a kind one as he gained a small smile. "Well, I really didn't know what answer I was going to get," he chuckled, his hand being placed onto his head. The woman shifted her head back up, seeing the boy's bright smile. This caused an eyebrow raise. She had expected anger, and rightfully so. A child that had been persecuted since the day he was born had the right to be angry, but that's not what she had seen from the blonde. Eventually, her questioning look turned to a small smile, one that seemed happy that she was forgiven, but she still felt the need to say something. "I'm sorry," she started, making the eyes of the blonde widen slightly as he let his arm fall to his side. "Wait, what?" he quickly questioned. "Why are you? It's only right to apologize," she quickly interrupted, further surprising Naruto. "With all we have seen, I don't know how we could mistake you for that thing, and I'm sorry. I'm sure the rest of the villagers will follow. You changed me with one question, but you might need to change everyone else with actions." Naruto's look softened. It turned sour for a second or two at the thought of the rest of the villagers. Changing this woman's mind was just luck, very good luck, but it wouldn't work for everyone, and that hurt, able to see the sour look for a few seconds. The lady shifted. Her small smile would have faded if she didn't have an idea to cheer up the boy. "Something from her shop would surely help. I will get you a gift. I know you made the mess in the back." Naruto gave a sheepish look at this before the woman continued, "But think of it as an extra sorry. It's something my husband left me with, and I think it will help you grow stronger." The woman walked inside and told Naruto to wait. The blonde had a small grin now at the thought of growing stronger. Something that helped him grow would be perfect. He could get stronger than Sasuke, or maybe even become Hokage if this thing made him stronger. It didn't take long for the woman to come back out, calmly clutching and concealing something in both hands. Whatever it was had to be small, and it also had to be cold. With how she had been trying to rub her hands together, Naruto quickly began to look from all angles, trying to see what the woman had brought from her shop, either with the help of light, or with his ninja skills. But then, he was stopped by the woman, which he gave a sheepish smile before standing back where he was before. The lady motioned for him to come closer, which he did, and even began to bend down to see this item that would make him stronger. Once the woman had opened her palms, Naruto deadpanned. In her hand were earrings, metal clip earrings at that. the part that went to your ear was almost like a chain, and the rest of it was a small ball, separated by colors of silver and blue. Naruto kept his deadpan look until he was forced to sweat drop when the lady tried to hand him the earrings. How could a couple of earrings help him, he thought sourly, having hoped for a sword, or any kind of weapon, maybe even a ninja scroll or something. Just take the earrings, I promise you they will make you stronger. The woman said kindly, still trying to force the earrings into Naruto's hands. At this point, Naruto felt he couldn't give her back the earrings, so he just gave up and accepted them, deciding to smile throughout to make the lady happy. They felt silky in his hands, smooth without any scratches, and no paint chipping either. They had also been cold, and considerably so, as the feeling was like ice on his skin. Maybe Sakura would want them, he thought to himself, still keeping up the fake smile before looking towards the woman. Thank you, he strained, clenching the earrings before putting his hands in his pockets. You're welcome. Oh, and I forgot to give you my name. Where are my manners? Naruto would have fallen flat at that if he didn't want to keep the charade of acting thankful. Today was just weird, but at least it wasn't bad anymore. He remembered waking up and falling off the bed, getting hit by Sakura for asking a simple question like how are you, coming here, becoming bored for most of the day, before getting yelled at by Sakura. But hey, who's counting all the time Sakura had hit or yelled at him? My name is Bulma, and don't worry, I know who you are, most everyone in this village does. I'll see you later, young man. And don't lose those earrings, okay? Naruto gave a quick nod, and not long after the woman went inside and left him on the road with his new help. Well, it's better than nothing, he said as he held up one of the earrings. He glanced at each feature before putting it back in his pocket, and he then ran off to find his team. Time skip. Naruto sat down with his team, well, most of it anyway, after finishing the mission Bulma had given them. He, Sasuke, and Sakura sat in their training area 7. The only problem was, somehow, while walking together, Kakashi had wandered off, and by the time he got to the training area, it would probably be night. It was so annoying how the silver-haired man had always tended to be late. No matter what, Kakashi would be late, and with a lame excuse to boot. Naruto sat atop a log, holding the earrings he had gained to his face with a bored look. A frown was on his face as he wondered why Bulma had thought this would make him stronger. Either she was crazy, or these things actually did something, and Naruto really didn't know if it was the former or the latter. And as he squatted, they didn't seem all that special, just weirdly shaped, and if anything they had been a bit small. While in his own world, Naruto didn't notice as Sakura looked to him in wonder, confused about why she wasn't hounded for a date today. Although she enjoyed it, she wouldn't let Onoi know such a thing. Plus, she didn't want to give the blonde idiot ideas on how to pursue her. But what had really caught her eyes were the earrings that Naruto seemed so invested in. She didn't know where he had gotten them, but they shined brightly in the daylight, and they seemed pretty to the pinkett. Either way, she would have to play nice to see them, and it wasn't something she wasn't up to, especially with how she thought the blonde still saw her. So while trying to calm down her disgust and annoyance, she began to practice her nice tone that was usually used on Sasuke, and finally clearing her breath, she gave a smile. Sasuke was somehow the first to notice all of this, and he began to keep his eyes on Sakura and Naruto expectantly, waiting for something to happen. Naruto, the girl said kindly, her eyes closed as her mouth curved to a smile. The blonde looked towards the girl, turning away from the earrings in his hand. Wondered why his name sounded like that coming from her mouth. It usually didn't sound as if she was being kind to him, especially when saying his name. The tone was definitely off, but he didn't know why. His eyes narrowed, but not enough to be noticed before they softened with the smile that he usually held. As the #1 knuckle-headed ninja, note, this version of Naruto is still the normal Naruto. I'm just showing he is smarter than he lets on. He is still naturally hyperactive and impulsive, but unlike in the anime, he is actively showing he is smart. Note end. What? Asked Naruto, his tone soft and sweet. almost disgusting Sakura before she realized she still was no closer to figuring out why he had those earrings. But quickly she gathered herself again, wonder stuck in her throat, and she hadn't even asked the question yet. "I was wondering, where did you get the earrings from?" she asked, keeping her soft tone, trying to be less noticeable. A small pause covered the training ground after Sakura finished. Naruto's face had lost its smile, and now he held a surprised look, and in the moment Naruto felt the wisps of air tickling his neck. Before leaving him and shaking the trees and grass, the feeling of the cold breeze stuck with him, as he began to think on why the girl was interested in what he held. Why had she wanted to know about the earrings? If anything, it was surprising to see she had even willingly talked to him. But the boy guessed it was fine. He hadn't figured them out, and it wasn't like it was some big secret, and at the most, the girl probably wouldn't even believe him, which was fine by the blonde. As long as she wasn't attacking him or berating him, he was fine with talking to her. So with a small sigh, his face went back to its normal grin. He held up the earrings in front of the girl with a bit of excitement, believing that Bulma wouldn't lie about the power behind the earrings. "I got these from the nice old lady, she gave them to me after." Naruto paused, remembering his questioning of the lady, his mouth arched into a frown before quickly going back into a smile. "Anyway, she gave me these as a thank you for something I did." "You weren't kidding when you said she was nice." With his unwavering smile, the blonde didn't notice as the pinkett began to frown, her maw becoming just a bit jealous. Questions of why the whiskered boy was given a gift, when she had cleaned up his mess, filled her head. She had done a lot of work today, and the lady just gave Naruto something for doing nothing. To her, this was unfair. Beginning to realize she had lost her kind smile, Sakura corrected herself as quickly as she could. "That was nice of her. Can I see them?" she said slowly, her voice deceptively sweet as she reached for the earrings. Her hand inched closer to the jewelry with each second, as if she expected for Naruto to just hand his gift over to her, like she had been the one to receive it. Or in her mind, the one who deserved it. Naruto looked at her reaching hand, his eyes narrowed quickly, making him resemble a fox before pulling away his hand. "No way!" he yelled loudly. His hand quickly found its way into his pockets with the earrings. "What if you lose them? I'm not gonna disrespect Bulma by just handing you something she trusted me with." Sakura had already pulled back her hand, surprised by how quickly the boy had denied her the earrings. Surprise quickly turned to anger as her pulled back hand clenched into a fist. "Well, I still don't understand why the hell she gave you those. If anything, I should have gotten them," Sakura shouted. "Well, that's too bad. She gave it to me, and they're special. Wouldn't hand them over to anyone, not even you, Sakura-chan," Naruto shouted back. Through all of this, Sasuke held an annoyed scowl. He wondered how when the two argued, it sounded worse than when the blonde was getting hit. At the least it was less loud, but still more annoying than anything the two ever did. Sakura gave a small pout. Unable to argue with the blonde's answer, she quickly realized it wasn't her place to try and take the earrings, but as she looked at them while they gleamed in the boy's hands, it became clear she was still curious. "Okay, I guess," she started, "I understand why you don't want me to touch them, but..." Naruto looked toward Sakura again, showing another confused look on his face as he turned. "What?" he quickly asked, wondering what she had on her mind. "Why are they so special?" she questioned quickly. "You said they were special, and you don't want me to touch them, but they are just earrings, right?" Naruto gave a grin. He put his arm forward and let the earrings dangle from his fingers. The sun hit the silver parts even more, and they shimmered brighter. Sasuke finally moved at this, looking to Naruto closely, as he began to wonder what made the special as well, mainly out of boredom. "Bulma said." Naruto paused, trying to make it more suspenseful. Sakura looked even closer, waiting for the blonde to spit out whatever he was going to say. "They would make me stronger." Sakura and Sasuke were finally able to deadpan. Naruto's words didn't do justice to what he thought the earrings might do. Sasuke, however, began to dismiss the conversation, his face turning blank as he began to believe Naruto was more of an idiot now than before. Sasuke was the first to speak, his voice condescending and dismissive as he talked. Naruto, if you believe that, then you're more of an dobbe than I expected. At this, Naruto clenched the earrings just a bit more, emotion starting to boil up at the implication. Are you implying Bulma lied? Questioned the whiskered boy aggressively, his grin turned into a scowl as he rose quickly. Of course she lied, how could earrings even make you stranger? Sasuke responded as he waved his hand dismissively. Hey, she wouldn't lie, the blonde shouted. I just haven't figured them out yet, he continued, lowering his voice before looking down and losing his scowl. Sasuke rolled his eyes, soon finding the whiskered blonde insufferable. Sakura looked to the two, having not been surprised by their arguing, more so surprised that Naruto fully believing in a woman he just met. Okay then dobbe, if these earrings make you stronger, how are they used? Naruto paused at Sasuke's words, they grabbed at his earlier thoughts, bringing it back at full force. He didn't know exactly how to activate the earrings, and it showed on his face. He had no clue how to do anything with these things, not even a hint from Bulma. Eventually Sasuke, and Sakura, had realized the blonde didn't know what he was doing, and didn't know anything about the earrings to begin with. Sasuke's scowl contorted into a mock smirk, he then got up from the grass before crossing his arms. You have something with supposed power, and you don't even know what it does or how to use it. The whiskered blonde didn't respond, he just kept his confused look on the earrings. Before giving a shrug much to his two teammates' disappointed looks, man, I thought you were an idiot, but not like this, Sasuke said blankly, now standing in front of Naruto. Have you even tried putting one on? The black-haired boy asked. Naruto looked back to the earrings, a new idea in his head as he gave a grin. Maybe the black-haired uchiha was right, maybe it was as simple as putting them on, they were magnetic clip one in the first place. With this thought, the blonde quickly put one of the jewels, expecting a flash of light or windstorm as he gave a quick pose with his fist in the air. There was wind, however. That was the breeze that had already been there. Naruto looked blankly, losing his grin before readjusting himself. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, he said lowly, still being heard by Sasuke and Sakura. The whiskered boy strikes a different pose, his fist now to his side, with an open palm in front of him as he held a low stance. This didn't work either, and now Sakura began to giggle at how silly the blonde looked. Eventually, the goofy shinobi began to go through multiple poses, each one not causing a flash, or change or anything at all. With his arms still crossed, Sasuke gave a sigh, annoyed by this, before speaking. See, they don't do anything, he said mockingly, still holding a frown. Naruto gave the black-haired boy a mock glare, angered and tired by the rudeness the boy had always shown. No matter what he did, the Uchiha always thought he was better. Maybe it was time to prove the brat prodigy wrong for once. Naruto kept his glare. He then shifted his frown into an annoyed smile before speaking. Oh yeah, how about you put one on if you're so smart? The boy ended his sentence with a yell, carefully watching for a reaction from the duck-but-haired Uchiha. Sasuke ended up tilting his head confusedly, not so much surprised by what Naruto said, but just confused by how quickly he was able to push the blonde's buttons. Meanwhile Sakura was imagining how the black-haired boy would look when helping, mainly what he would look like if he had put on the earrings. Sasuke smirked and crossed his arms, letting his smug look bug the blonde a bit more before speaking. What makes you think I would put that damn thing on, let alone entertain the fact that you actually think the jewelry you gained do anything? Naruto grumbled, he grit his teeth blankly. More emotions began to boil up in him as he began to think about punching the black-haired boy square in his face, which, while wasn't a bad idea, wouldn't really help him do anything. He would still consider it, however. But before the whiskered blonde could take any action, Sakura spoke up. The pinkett quickly stood in front of the two, making sure one couldn't lash out at the other. With a small smile to Naruto, which left the boy a bit more confused, as he again wasn't used to the kind smile from Sakura. She then turned to Sasuke with the same smile before speaking. "Sasuke, how about you just help Naruto?" the girl said kindly before putting her hands on her hips. "It wouldn't take long, and it's not like we got anything better to do." Sasuke let his arms fall, looking at Sakura then to Naruto. He just didn't like the idea of encouraging this. It was already annoying as is, helping the dobbe would just make it worse, and he was starting to suspect the only reason the girl wanted him to put on the thing was to ogle over him. Sasuke's eyes narrowed slightly, his frown unchanged as he kept up his hardened exterior. This only made Sakura plead for him to help, and each time he had silently refused, was another time she gave a plea. This kept on until Sasuke's eyes were in a twitch, annoyed from the same question being asked over and over. Anything was better than this, so he finally caved and gave in. "Fine," the Uchiha yelled angrily. "I'll help the idiot," he continued, "at least to get you off my back. You two are annoying as hell." Sakura didn't care about the last insult Sasuke threw in, she was just happy to get the boy to agree, and now she would see him wearing an earring, something that was somehow widely sought after in the Sasuke fan club. "Thanks Sasuke-kun, you won't regret it," the pinkett said with a smile. She moved her hands together before inching closer towards him. Sasuke pushed her away with one hand. "Already done with all of this," before speaking with a sigh, "just clip it on already." Naruto then threw him one of the earrings, which he caught without a second thought. The black-haired boy looked to the jewelry. Their cold touch on his skin a bit surprising, but it went dismissed as he stared intently at them, somehow studying them in an instant. He noticed the metal was harder than he expected, a lot harder, almost made out of the same material as kunai, or maybe a katana, and with a slight breath in, he could even smell them. This was only thanks to him being a prodigy, and as well as having focused chakra into his nose. The smell was metallic, which wasn't surprising at all, but there was something else the boy couldn't place, a smell he couldn't describe for the life of him, so he ignored it as well. Sasuke moved the earring's chain into his fingers, deciding to finally put the damn thing on. He moved his other hand to unclip it, he then moved it to his left ear, already feeling the cold before the thing ever touched his skin. Once he got it on, there was a small pause as Sasuke dropped his arms. Sakura and Naruto looked to the boy as he crossed his arms in wait, and as they did, nothing seemed to happen. Silence spread through the area, a sense of nothingness as they all waited. Calming wisps of air surrounded them. But like with Naruto's experience, nothing came after. Once it seemed right, Sasuke spoke. "See," he started, turning to Naruto and Sakura having been tired of the silence, "I told you this was just a..." The boy was forced to stop as the earring on his ear began to float, his words getting caught in his throat as he looked at the jewelry confusedly. He would have reached out for it if he hadn't been so shocked, eyes widening with wonder. A similar thing was happening to Naruto's earring. The blonde's earring had mirrored Sasuke's movement, and without second thought he yelled out, "What the?" he shouted. Their teammate looked to them with a bit of surprise, and Sakura's eyes widened a bit at the sudden movement. In only a matter of seconds did the two earrings start to flail, as if pushed by an external force. The pieces of jewelry began to flail faster, protruding upward as if caught by the wind. The ground seemed to shake, and dust began to rise, forming a tornado around the two boys, keeping Sakura from seeing them. What was going on? She thought worriedly. She had expected anything but what was happening right in front of her. Her mouth left agape, and her arm raised to protect her from the dust as she was forced to look on silently. The force of the wind began to push her back, and Sakura had to strain her eyes as dust flew at her. This wasn't happening. Another thought rang in her head, causing a short burst of hope. There was no way this was happening, it just couldn't. It wasn't possible a wind like this was a result of some earrings. But as small as her hopes were, she knew that wasn't the truth. Hell, there wasn't any other option for her to point to, even as much as she wanted to believe the earrings were just a joke. As her Sasuke had said, it was becoming clear they had started this. Not a second later did the wind begin to pick up, the seconds of Sakura not being able to see her teammates growing longer. She was then forced to close her eyes tightly, unable to see whatever happened next, now concentrating on the sound instead of what laid in front of her, the sound of trees, frantically moving in the wind, the sound of her breath, long and tensed, the sound of the fast-moving dust, hiding Sasuke and Naruto, and after a while it began to settle, the sound of the trees calmed, the raging sandstorm on a sunny day, subsiding, and finally, the force that was once holding Sakura back, was gone. "Is it over?" she questioned aloud, her voice sounding of wonder as she slowly opened her eyes. It felt over, there wasn't any wind, there wasn't any sound, just pure calm around her. The girl gave a small smile. Finding all the excitement was over after it had happened so fast, happily turning to where she expected her teammates to be. "Hey guys," she started kindly, ready to see how the two were doing, only to pause when her eyes landed on a figure that wasn't Sasuke or Naruto. Her small smile quickly disappeared, replaced with a confused look as she raised an eyebrow, which was returned by the figure once he realized the girl was looking at him. The boy was as tall as Sasuke, possibly taller than the brooding Uchiha, with one side of black hair, and another side a bright yellow similar to Naruto's. His eyes were light blue, but more light than a certain blonde's. In fact, the blue almost seemed silver. Sakura would have mistaken it for such if she hadn't been a shinobi. A surprising thing was the fact the boy had the same whisker marks that Naruto had, just a bit more pronounced. And as she looked closer she was able to see the extra lines making up his birthmarks. Next, his clothes. The things were made up and of what she could tell was Sasuke's clothes, as well as Naruto's. A even mix of both is what made his jacket and pants. Which was very confusing for Sakura. However, she couldn't tell the difference between his shoes and headband, with Sasuke's, and she still laid skeptical on how the boy got that headband since she hadn't seen the boy in her class ever. She knew she would notice a half-blonde half-black-haired boy, wearing a tight black and blue jumpsuit similar to Naruto's, and the black shinobi pants held similarities to Sasuke's shorts, however they were small. Not wasting any more time staring at the shinobi, she steadied herself and called out to him. "Hey," she said sharply, her voice strong and demanding, "where are my teammates, and who are you?" As she questioned him, the boy shifted subtly. His eyebrow raised a bit higher, and his blank look put even more questions in Sakura's head. "What are you talking about?" he asked with a confused tone, his voice somehow sounding like Naruto and Sasuke at the same time, shocking the girl with only a few words. Sakura was left speechless, allowing the new boy to go on. We are, wait." The kid shinobi quickly paused, before making a look that reminded Sakura of Sasuke, his face contorted with confusion, knowing what he wanted to say, but somehow feeling they didn't make sense. The pause and silence wasn't long, although it was almost deafening as no one spoke a word. Sakura stared again at the blonde, waiting for him to say something else with his weird reverberating voice. The boy now looked at his hands, looking to himself as if something is wrong. He was acting weird. If she didn't know any better, Sakura would say he was born yesterday, or maybe he was just an airhead like Naruto. But she couldn't leave this be any more, even though only a few seconds have passed. She had to figure out where Sasuke was, and to a lesser extent Naruto. "You better start making sense," she started, her voice growing in force as she narrowed her eyes, trying to be more intimidating. The boy looked to her again, still holding his hands up as he blankly stared. Sakura narrowed her eyes more at this, not liking the idea of a silent unknown shinobi in her village. "I'll ask you this once, where are Sasuke and Naruto?" When speaking, the girl's voice somehow became low, almost annoyed and quite forceful as she stared cautiously. She didn't notice as a look of surprise was suddenly painted on the boy's face. He let his arms drop, feeling his voice caught in his throat as the two names the pinkett said reverberated through his mind. "Sasuke, Naruto, Sasuke, Naruto," he thought to himself, flashes of memories and images in his mind, overlapping each other as more and more came rushing to him. He was Sasuke, right? No wait, or what he Naruto? he couldn't tell as memories kept coming to him, each one coming faster than the last, all of them either from Naruto or Sasuke. Who was he? He thought absently, first seeing images of what he thought were his parents, their black hair almost reminding him of himself. But quickly another memory of a blonde man and red-haired woman flashed at him next, making him question who he was even more. Was he Sasuke, or Naruto? He couldn't tell anymore as panic began to cloud his mind. Unable to pull one strand of memories from the other, as he began to relive every single one, the stress of the memories flashing in his mind made the boy react quick, clutching his head with both of his hands as he grit his teeth and harshly closed his eyes. Sakura, finally noticing what was going, began to question if the boy was okay. Although she didn't know him, she could quickly tell that he was in pain, and her want to help quickly took over her urgency of finding Sasuke and Naruto. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked worriedly, wondering exactly what the boy was dealing with as she ran towards him. The pain of the memories wasn't subsiding, and it began to grow, as if being stabbed in the head thousands of times in a second. And then the next second would continue the pain. The boy began to take in fast, shallow breaths, losing himself in his thoughts before falling to his knees. Sakura was unsure of what to do. Of course she rushed down with him the second she saw him fall, trying to steady his breathing with words, but that didn't seem to do anything, and more thoughts of what she was meant to do in this situation began to surface. She was a shinobi of Konoha, a pink-haired kunoichi who knew there were rules and protocols for unknown ninja in her village, but the rules couldn't help her deal with this, as she was either meant to let him die, or ask him to state his business in the village, neither of which helped in this situation. And she wasn't doing either, no matter how many rules it went against, or how it made her feel that she was breaking such rules. Although as she tried to steady the boy, she still had little whispers in her head that told her to do otherwise. "It's okay," Sakura said, her voice faltering as she fought to stay calm. She knelt beside the boy, trying to meet his gaze even as his hands dug into his scalp. "You're going to be fine. Just focus on your breathing. In and out." But there was no response. The boy's grip on his head tightened, his nails nearly breaking skin. His trembling breaths came in shallow gasps, and Sakura could see the veins in his hands straining under the pressure. Her chest tightened. Whatever the boy was experiencing, it was unlike anything she'd ever encountered. This wasn't just pain, it was something deeper, something breaking him apart. Then, in a voice barely audible, he whispered, "Who am I?" The words sent a chill through her. They weren't just words, they were a plea, fractured and desperate. Sakura froze, her mind racing. Who is this boy? Why is he in so much pain? And what could have caused this? Protocol be damned. She thought, her protective instincts taking over. She wasn't about to let this boy suffer any longer. Whatever the rule said about unknown shinobi in the village, she'd deal with the consequences later. "Hang on," she muttered under her breath, steeling herself. With a determined frown, she slid her arms under him, surprised by how light he felt despite his height compared to hers. Her monster-like strength came through as she hoisted him up with little effort. She didn't stop to question it, as this had always been the norm, especially in the short time of her graduation. The boy went limp in her arms, his body unresponsive but still trembling. Sakura gritted her teeth and started running. Her steps quick and purposeful. She needed to get him to the hospital, somewhere safe, before whatever was happening to him got worse. Time skip. Kakashi stood in a hospital room, silently looking forward as he was beside the third Hokage himself. The room held the calming scent of sage, and dimly lit interior, as the blinds were closed, making sure no light was able to find its way in. On one of the two hospital beds slept a half-blonde half-black-haired boy, who was brought in by his student, after a long hour of explanation for what supposedly happened to her and her teammates. Matters he hadn't been ready for had risen, and it chilled the air as he started to feel something akin to anger for the boy who laid asleep. it was all on him. He had something to do with 2 of his students being gone, and just with that fact alone he couldn't stand his presence. The silver-haired Jonin's eyes narrowed as he concentrated on the boy's breathing, having been angered by the fact that this shinobi. He had not only held a leaf headband, with no records on him ever existing, but the boy was the only lead on his 2 missing students, and now instead of looking for Sasuke and Naruto, he was here standing with the Hokage, waiting for the brat to wake up. The silence in the room was palpable. Kakashi's anger not going unnoticed by the third as they both looked forward, one coldly, the other with understanding, clarity. Hiruzen started, his voice having held the wise tone of a aged shinobi. We must look at this with clarity, we cannot afford to let anger consume us in a time like this, Kakashi. Kakashi didn't responded, his eyes just narrowed a bit more before crossing his arms out of spite. Clarity, the man questioned, his voice only coming to a mutter. 2 of my students are missing, this boy knows something about it, and you want me to hold a clear mind? That's impossible, Hokage-sama, no matter what you can tell me, this boy has to know something, and there he is. Asleep as he can be. The third looked to his old Ambu with a look akin to pity, but he quickly turned back to the boy on the bed, deciding Kakashi needed his full wisdom. The third gave a small sigh, trying to come up with the words that his shinobi needed to hear, and once he closed his eyes he spoke out. His voice became more comforting and soothing. Maybe he does know something, but what if it's not something you want to hear? Or maybe he knows nothing, and he is just a kid who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Kakashi turned towards Hiruzen, his eyes full of worry as he heard those words. Or maybe, there is nothing there at all. All I can say for sure is that we cannot blame this child for anything, until we know exactly what he was doing in Training Ground 7. The silver-haired man looked down at this, his mind racing with thoughts of what to do while thinking on the boy in front of him. The Hokage words got to him, but still a bit of anger lingered as he sat there. He didn't know where his students were, and he would have to impatiently wait for something or nothing to come up. Silence filled the room again, only accented by the beeps of the heart monitor as Kakashi's hardened look started to soften into sorrow. The oppressive stillness of the hospital room persisted. Kakashi's hands twitched at his sides, his thoughts a whirlwind of worry and frustration. Hiruzen, the third Hokage, stood steady beside him, his calming presence a stark contrast to Kakashi's simmering anger. I understand your concern, Kakashi, Hiruzen said softly, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Naruto and Sasuke are your responsibility, your students. But anger and assumptions will cloud our judgment. We must approach this situation with patience and precision. Kakashi let out a slow, measured breath, his gaze flicking back to the boy. Half blonde, half black hair, his youthful face was pale, almost peaceful in sleep. Though Kakashi knew better. This boy, this stranger, was at the center of everything. The unknown was always dangerous, and Kakashi's instinct to protect his students and village flared hotter with every passing second. He doesn't even have a name in our records, Kakashi muttered, his voice sharp. No history. No trace. And yet, he's wearing a leaf headband. That's not something you just find lying around. The third nodded, his brow furrowed in contemplation. That is troubling. However, consider this, if this boy is connected to Naruto and Sasuke's disappearance, forcing the answers out of him while he's unstable may yield nothing, or worse, create further chaos. Kakashi's hands clenched into fists. He hated this feeling of helplessness, the gnawing uncertainty. His mind kept drifting back to his missing students, Naruto's boisterous laughter, Sasuke's stoic determination. They were out there somewhere, and he wasn't with them. The thought alone made his stomach twist, and if he isn't connected? Kakashi asked bitterly. If he's just some kid who wandered into the training grounds by accident? Why is his chakra as large as Naruto's? Why does he know my students' names? None of this adds up. Hiruzen met Kakashi's gaze, his expression solemn. Those are questions we will find answers to in time. For now, he is just a boy, Kakashi. Treat him as such. The words cut deeper than Kakashi cared to admit. He sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly as some of the tension bled away. You're right, he admitted quietly, though it felt like a betrayal to his own instincts. But I can't just stand here and do nothing. Hiruzen offered a faint smile. You won't have to. The boy will wake, and when he does, we will question him, not with anger, but with care. Until then, focus on what we can control. The simplicity of the advice grounded Kakashi, if only a little. He nodded, his hardened expression softening further, going back to sorrowful. I can't lose them, Hokage-sama. Not again. The third's gaze softened, understanding etched into his weathered face. The Hokage knew exactly what the silver-haired man was feeling, who exactly the man was comparing the two boys to, which was connected to the man's promise to keep the two protected. It was no wonder why Kakashi had been simmering in anger, but as long as he could keep his shinobi calm, the Hokage knew it would be fine. You won't. Trust in your students, Kakashi. They are resilient. And trust in yourself, you've done more for them than you may realize. Before Kakashi could respond, a faint stirring from the bed caught their attention. Both men turned their focus to the boy, whose breathing had quickened, his fingers twitching against the blanket. His mismatched hair shifted as he moved slightly, a faint groan escaping his lips. He's waking up, Kakashi said, his voice tense but measured. Hiruzen stepped forward, his expression steady. Then let us hope his awakening brings us closer to the answers we seek. The half-blonde kept shifting, his arms flailing out on the bed. With each movement the blanket was disturbed, and with one final jerk he jolted up, a look of pain with a trickle of sweat rolling down his cheek, gritting his teeth as he looked forward, seemingly unable to notice Hiruzen and Kakashi as he gave a grimace. The boy strained, rushing thoughts finally slowing, and it seemed to only take a few seconds for him to give a sigh of relief. The two shinobi waited patiently for the boy to acknowledge them. Unfortunately, the half-blonde was more focused on quieting any lingering thoughts from before he got here, and he didn't seem keen on looking up any time soon. Seeing this, Hiruzen cleared his throat. Getting the boy's attention with nothing being said by Kakashi, the half-blonde looked up subtly, slightly staring to Kakashi then Hiruzen. A look of recognition plastered on the boy's face. He looked to have realized where exactly he was. However, after the look of recognition faded, his gaze landed on the two people in front of him. His face quickly was torn between a smile and a mock frown, although his body seemed to be calm, slouching and relaxed as he felt the cloth beneath him. He seemed to be comfortable in their presence, which only confused Kakashi a bit more, and made him just a bit more cautious. "Hello, young man," said Hiruzen calmly, his voice stretching to the boy with its soothing pull. "I am Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage," he said with a smile, suggesting the boy should have some basic knowledge on shinobi. "And this is one of my close shinobi, Kakashi Hatake," he said while gesturing to the silver-haired man. The third Hokage couldn't read the blonde's reaction once he finished, so he decided to continue, keeping a kind tone in his voice as he spoke. "We have some simple questions for you. You see, two of my younger shinobi have gone missing the same time you appeared. It would help us if you could tell us anything you would possibly know." The blonde's twisted look turned into a sorrowful one. Although the older male didn't understand why he looked as such, he could tell the boy was a bit disturbed. Meanwhile, Kakashi kept watch over the boy, looking for any small tidbits of information from the blonde's movements. However, like with everything else so far, there was still nothing he could tell for sure about the boy. The boy stayed quiet, the sorrow on his face hardening as he looked down. He clenched the blanket that was covering him before his eyes began to twitch with unease. Hiruzen noted the sudden panic in the boy. It seemed like he might know something after all. which would mean he was close to finding where Naruto and Sasuke were, but he would have to calm the boy if he wanted to get anything out of him, although with how he hadn't spoken in the short time of him being awake it would be hard to figure out what would calm him. Hiruzen gave a tired sigh. He then looked to the boy again, trying not to convey his worry before speaking. Please, you must know something. I can tell you have some knowledge on our problem. As the third said this, the half-blonde clenched the blanket a bit more, simply quiet and becoming more uneasy by the second. Seeing this, Kakashi's eyes narrowed suspiciously, suspecting the unknown boy had something to hide, which was the reason he hadn't spoken yet. Kakashi didn't know how wrong he was as he began to step forward, his arms falling to his sides, and his lone eye giving a sharp glare. While he stepped forward, the man still tried to calm himself, which was possibly the only reason why Hiruzen didn't stop him. He knew that the boy was their only lead, so he wouldn't hurt or scare him, but he needed to make him understand that this was important. Even if he had no trust in whatever the boy would say. My students, Kakashi started, his voice low and tense as the boy looked up to him, are gone, and I don't know where they are. If you could help us find them, it would mean everything to me. The silver-haired man's eyes shifted a bit, from a glare to mock hope. He wanted the boy to understand, as quickly as possible, and he hoped this had helped. The half-blonde looked in the man's eyes, seemingly searching for something before stopping said search. He let the blanket he was clutching so hard go, its soft feel leaving his hands as he calmed himself. He looked down again before spoke softly, Hiruzen and Kakashi almost not being able to hear him. You wouldn't understand, he whispered, the silent words widening Hiruzen's eyes while narrowing Kakashi's. What do you mean? Kakashi pressed, his want to find his students clouding his kind tone. This made Hiruzen step forward to put a hand on Kakashi's shoulder, calming him a bit as the two looked to the half-blonde. Please, you have to explain to us what you know, it could help us find them. The boy opened his mouth, before closing it with unsure look. We aren't here to harm you, pushed Kakashi kindly, you can trust us. Okay, the half-blonde started, making Hiruzen smile a bit. It's going to be a bit complicated, but please try and stay with me on this. The two shinobi gave a slight nod, ready for whatever the boy had to say, grateful that this hadn't taken too long. I'm assuming the two shinobi you guys are talking about are Naruto and Sasuke. This is going to sound a bit imposition, but here it goes. They are me. Kakashi and Hiruzen had deadpan faces, left a bit confused by the prospect of the answer the boy gave. The boy glanced between the two, his lips pressing into a thin line. He could see the disbelief etched into their faces and sighed deeply. His hands tightening around the blanket. I know how that sounds, he muttered, looking down, avoiding their gazes. But it's the truth. Naruto and Sasuke. They're me. They have fused. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed slightly, his analytical mind working overtime to process the boy's words. Fused? He repeated, his voice calm but filled with curiosity. Explain what you mean by that. The half-blonde exhaled slowly, trying to find the right words. It's like, someone or something took pieces of each of them, their chakra, their memories, their emotions, and mixed them into this body. I'm not just me. I'm them too. Their thoughts, their feelings, they're all here. He tapped his temple with 2 fingers. But it's weird, almost as if I'm not fully them either. Kakashi's posture stiffened, his lone eye narrowing. And how exactly did this happen? He asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Who did this to you? I don't know. The boy snapped, his frustration bubbling to the surface. I didn't ask for this, all right? One moment, they were here, and the next, I woke up like this. Hiruzen raised his hand to stroke his chin, his expression calm but firm. Kakashi, let the boy speak, he said before turning back to the half-blonde. Take your time, young man. We need to understand everything. The boy nodded hesitantly, his breath steadying. It's hard to describe. When I woke up, it was like waking up from a nightmare, except I wasn't alone in my head. I could feel their chakra, their memories mixing to make mine. Kakashi crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. If what you're saying is true, then someone, or something, must have done this. Do you remember anything before you woke up here? Anything at all? The half-blonde paused, his brow furrowing as he tried to recall. And as if something clicked in his head he gave a gasp. The earrings, he shouted suddenly. Hiruzen's gaze grew more thoughtful, his eyebrow rose as he looked confused. What do you mean? He questioned, not understanding the boy's quick outburst. It's these, the boy said while pointing towards the earring on his left ear. The attention was put on the jewelry once he said this. Kakashi and Hiruzen having become even more confused, the boy tugged gently on the earring hanging from his left ear, his gaze focused intently on the small piece of jewelry. These. They're the reason, he said firmly, though his voice trembled with uncertainty. Right before I woke up they put these on. I can remember that much. Kakashi's eye narrowed, his mind racing. He stepped closer, examining the earring without touching it. It looked simple enough, an unassuming silver and blue ball, hanging from a chain with a magnetic connector. Intricate carvings etched into its surface. But there was something about it, something that felt off. Do you remember where they came from? Kakashi asked cautiously. The half-blonde closed his eyes once more, his fingers brushing over the earring before he opened his silver eyes. Yes, I know where they came from. We can ask Bulma about them. She gave them to Naruto after all. Hiruzen and Kakashi gained questioning looks, in wonder of who the boy was talking about. The half-blonde quickly realized this, and gave a sheepish smile similar to Naruto's. Sorry, forgot you two probably wouldn't have known about Bulma, he said shyly. Well, she is a kind old lady Naruto met on today's mission. From what I can remember she must have known this would happen, meaning she could get Naruto and Sasuke back to normal. Kakashi gave a puzzled look, unsure of what the boy was saying, as it seemed like this Bulma lead Naruto into doing this. In some shape or form his blonde student had been manipulated to do this, but that was the least of his worries. While he knew this boy wasn't his student's, it was made clear even though the two knuckleheads fused to create the boy, he was still different from them, and thus was a separate person from the two, which put up more questions, one such being what would happen if they unfused. That would be like killing the boy in front of him, which of course he didn't ask to be made, but it didn't feel right destroying him just because of that either. And as Kakashi looked to Hiruzen he could tell he was thinking something similar. While they wanted the two boys back, there was still too many questions in the air. Okay then, Hiruzen let his arm drop before turning to Kakashi. You will take him to this Bulma, and see what you can do or whatever information she has. I must go back to the Hokage Tower. Even being away for a day some paperwork must have piled up. Kakashi gave a quick nod as the boy watched the two exchange, and after the quick nod Hiruzen left the room silently in thought about what would happen from now on. The silver-haired shinobi turned back to the boy as the door shut with a soft crash, wanting to get some more information before they would go to the old woman who had give the boy the jewelry. Kakashi leaned on the wall, his gaze falling on the boy that sat still on the bed in silence. The man wondered a bit about the boy, before speaking out to him with a calm tone. So, we can't really call you just Naruto or Sasuke, so what do you want to be called? The half-blonde quickly turned to the man, confused by his words for a bit before he let his hand rest on his chest, as if trying to feel for answer quite stayed between the two. The half-blonde hadn't expected the question, although it made a bit of sense to him. He may have been made up of the two, but he was in fact himself. This made him smile a bit, find an answer to a question that had been in the back of his head this whole time. But then the smile faded, and a frown came as he wondered if he would have to stop existing for Naruto and Sasuke to come back. This made the boy's eyes furrow, before ultimately softening back to normal. "You can call me Erasure," the boy said blankly. Before leaving the bed he had been in the whole conversation. "But you won't have to memorize it," he said coldly, his hands moving to his jacket, dusting it off before looking up to Kakashi. The silver-haired shinobi now held a confused look, the sudden coldness in the boy's tone somewhat hurting as he couldn't figure out why he had become like that all of a sudden. Erasure then moved silently to the door of the hospital room, pausing in front of the door for a few seconds. Before he opened it and left, and with one small sigh, Kakashi followed after him. The two made their way to the old knick-knack shop from today's mission. Erasure and Kakashi didn't exchange words, one not wanting to disturb the other, while the second had been thinking on something in his mind. As Erasure walked through the streets of Konoha, the weight of the situation lingered in the air. Arashi's mind raced, his thoughts like a whirlwind. Who was he now? Was he just a temporary existence, a creation of forces beyond his control, or was he truly his own person? And if he was, what would that mean for Naruto and Sasuke? He couldn't shake the feeling that something larger was at play, something far beyond just the earrings that had fused them together. Kakashi, walking beside him, observed in silence. Though Arashi's outward coldness remained, the flickers of uncertainty and emotion in his eyes didn't go unnoticed. Kakashi knew that beneath the surface, the boy was struggling to reconcile the pieces of his identity. It was one thing to be formed from the essence of others, but another to be faced with the question of whether he even had the right to exist as himself. The path ahead would be difficult, but Kakashi had seen the resilience of Naruto and Sasuke firsthand. Perhaps that same resilience, now in Erasure, would lead him to an answer. They arrived at the shop, the bell above the door chiming softly as they entered. The place was filled with old trinkets, books, and curiosities. In the corner, a small woman with messy blue hair stood behind a counter, her eyes narrowing as she saw them approach. "Ah, hello, welcome to my store. What a pleasure to have one of the shinobi who cleaned this place up come back," Bulma said, looking only to Kakashi as she spoke, her voice tinged with amusement. She gave Erasure a thoughtful look, but that didn't last long before she turned back to Kakashi, clearly not recognizing him. "Well, Miss Bulma, we have a situation," Kakashi responded with a bit of patience, giving a small but nervous eye smile. Bulma raised an eyebrow, not understanding the subtle hint that was given before gesturing the silver-haired man to go on with intrigue. With a sigh, Kakashi crossed his arms, looking down at Bulma, trying to figure out how to explain the events that had happened. "You see, you gave one of my students some earrings, and..." Quickly Bulma's eyes widened, before her face became one of excitement. "Did it work?" she asked. "Did Naruto fuse with someone?" As she pushed, her words became more frantic, something that shouldn't have been possible for her age, but going unnoticed. Arashi's gaze sharpened, his earlier coldness returning as he crossed his arms. "You did this. You knew this would happen. What's going to happen to them?" Bulma turned to Erasure. She took a step forward, inspecting his face before looking to the earrings he had on. "It is you," she commented with a slight chuckle. "I had no idea, so, you got to tell me, how does it feel?" she asked quickly, clearly interested more in the fusion than anything Kakashi had to say. This made Arashi's eyes twitch. She was treating this as a small matter, which he couldn't understand with the thoughts that were roaring in his head. While part of him was happy to see the old lady, the other part wanted nothing more than to yell at her for the way he was feeling right now. No matter how much he told himself it wasn't her fault. Seeing the boy's slight look of annoyance, Kakashi grasped his shoulder, wanting to calm what was essentially his student before something had happened. Then turning back to Bulma quickly, Kakashi gave an unnerved look, trying to find the answers he needed for Erasure. "So you purposely fused them together?" Bulma nodded, having a small proud smile as she did so. "Not exactly. It's a delicate process, merging two beings like that. I wanted to give Naruto a gift, as a way to say sorry, I made those earrings myself. It was based off an ancient power that I was once connected to. It was also the present I have my husband at a time, as a joke because he hated the idea of fusion. Bulma, still flustered, took a deep breath, trying to center herself. She looked back at Erasure with a solemn expression. You're not a mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought the fusion would be temporary, that Naruto and Sasuke would simply merge for a brief period and then separate. But I never accounted for the complexities of merging three individuals. The earrings were designed to balance them, but I see now what had happened to make them like this. She paused, her gaze shifting between Erasure and Kakashi. The power in you is both theirs, but it's also something else, something I believe you can both take a guess on. I don't know if it's possible to separate them anymore. Kakashi's eyes narrowed. The woman had suggested the fox had something to do with this, but luckily enough she hadn't let that information slide. Even if Naruto had known about such when he graduated, it had still been treason to talk about the Nine Tails. So, you're saying they might not be able to return to normal? That erasure is permanent? Bulma nodded slowly, the weight of the situation settling in. It's possible. I don't have all the answers, but I'm afraid that if we try to forcibly separate them, it could destroy Erasure. His existence is tied to theirs now, in ways that are beyond my understanding. Arashi's fingers tightened around the earring on his left ear, his mind whirling. So, I'm just stuck like this? I can't go back. Bulma took a step toward him, her expression softening slightly. I never wanted anyone to be hurt by this. But right now, we need to figure out what this new form means. If you truly are a separate person now, we'll need to find a way to help you. And if Naruto and Sasuke want to return to normal, we'll have to work together to figure out how to do that. Kakashi stepped forward, offering his support. Erasure, we'll figure this out. We're not abandoning you. The boy looked at him, his eyes conflicted. There was a part of him that felt deeply uncertain about his own identity, but hearing Kakashi's words, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. I don't want to disappear, Erasure murmured, almost to himself. Bulma, having calmed slightly, nodded thoughtfully. I'll need time to research this. But in the meantime, I'll do everything I can to help you understand who you are and what happened. There's still a lot we don't know. Erasure exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing just a little. Fine, he said, his voice low but steady. But I want answers. I want to know if I can have a future. Or if I'm just caught in someone else's mistake. Kakashi gave a reassuring nod, his voice filled with conviction. You'll have a future, Erasure. We'll make sure of it. And with that, the three of them stood there in the small shop, the weight of the unknown pressing heavily on their shoulders, but there was a quiet resolve in the air. They would find a way to untangle the mystery of Arashi's existence, even if it meant confronting difficult truths along the way. That's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and comment ideas if you can, and maybe you could share this with your friends, because you never know, they might like what ifs too. So without further ado, all Kage, out.